Our next lecturer comes to us from the United Kingdom. He is an author and ambassador for the YME UK, a victim support organization and part of the Forgiveness Project, as well as an ambassador for Restorative Justice International and a prison workshop facilitator. Please welcome Mr. Peter Wolf.
You know, there's certain things I disagree with what Robert was saying. I work in prisons in the UK. We deal with forgiveness, we deal with restorative justice, and I find that mostly we start with self-forgiveness. It is the place for people to start. Some of the wind's been taken out of my sails with what Robert was saying, because a lot of what he was saying I was going to be saying myself, so I've had to rejuggle everything in my head and start again. I've done a lot of workshops in prisons which are forgiveness, restorative justice and victim awareness programs, and each of these programs, I have to agree with what you say, Robert. Each of these programs have shown that the people who are attending are victims themselves, have been victims themselves. And to give you an example, I was recently in a prison in the UK training staff and inmates in a restorative approach, and it seemed they split up into groups, you know, into tribes. The staff went one way, and the residents, the inmates, went the other way. And out of 100% of the inmates had been victims of abuse, abusive relationships, abusive family upbringing, abuse from, and 100% of the inmates were children from single parents. 100% of the staff didn't admit to any abuse, didn't admit to any physical abuse, and all come from two-parent families. So there, I think, is something we need to look into. I read something recently that research showed that 70% of people in prison at the moment in the UK have some sort of brain injury where they suffered abuse as children. And this has gone on long term. So that's not anything to do with what I was going to talk about, but I just thought so I just want to read something to you. I read this earlier on to the guys, but I was working in a woman's prison, and this particular woman came onto the workshop, and I was working with the Forgiveness Project, and she came back 3 times and done the workshop over and over again. And this woman was serving 7 years for being a drug mule. She had been forced into bringing drugs into the country. She had also in the past been forced into prostitution. She had suffered abusive relationships over and over and over again. She had children who were in jail, drug addicts, etc., etc., etc. And recently, her 21-year-old son died in prison, just for Christmas. And what she said was, and I find it quite moving, she said, forgiveness can give a different view that means that there is hope. When I look at it like this, I feel I have a future and something to live for. Yeah? So forgiveness is a powerful, powerful medium. In the Forgiveness Project, I've met some really, really wonderful people. And one person in particular, her sister was murdered, was the first victim of a serial killer. And what she said was, her journey, she said, my journey into forgiveness began with murderous rage. Murderous rage. The initial feeling was that she wanted revenge on her sister's killer. And as time went on, as time went by, this feeling, the resentment, you know, this word resentment, I love this word resentment, it grew and it grew and it festered until she realised that she was doing her own sister a disservice for acting this way. and she chose to explore forgiveness. I wasn't going to talk about myself because I wasn't, but I feel it's sort of going to be part of the story. A lot of what was just said I could really relate to. I spent 18.5 years of my life in prison, and I came from a family that was quite brutal, and I went to children's homes where you got brutalised, and for many years I carried this resentment. There's no other way to put it. I carried this resentment, which made me rebel against it. Well, I chose to rebel against society. My anger festered and manifested in so many different ways because of the pain that I carried from childhood, and not only was it the physical pain, it was the shame that drove me into acting out in a certain way to give me something to hide behind. As a child, my I've tried, but I've struggled. Is there a microphone?
Yes. Yes, there's a microphone here.
It doesn't move.
Don't work? Okay, I'll shout a bit more. Is that alright? Okay. I'll talk. I can't. I'll do my best. Alright. I've only got a little voice. I was a twin. I was a twin at birth, and my twin died when we was 3 months old, and I've got no recollection of this twin. I don't remember the brother, but what I do know is that my grandmother, who brought us up, was a drunk. There's no other way to. I can't describe her. And she used to. I was a naughty child. I was one of these children who was always in trouble. And she used to say to me, "Thank God the other half of you died." Yeah, this was. And one day she tried to beat me to death with an iron bar, you know, the thing that you poke the fire with, and it was only through someone coming into the house and dragging her off that I didn't die, and that's what and for a long, long time I hated that woman. This is a big word, hate is a big word, big word. And I was in prison, and suddenly they opened the door and they said, I thought she was my mother, but she was my grandmother. "Your mother's dead." And I said, good, I'm glad, she deserves it. She deserves to die. Because for years and years and years I've done the utmost I could to take revenge on that one act, that one single act. So years go by, and I stopped committing crime. I stopped self-medicating. I was a drug addict. I stopped self-medicating, and I got involved with the forgiveness program, and I started talking to some real knowledgeable people about how I felt for the first time, you know, how I felt, what was going on for me. And they said, "You need to forgive." And I said, "Are you insane? Are you completely mental? Forgive all those things, what those people have done to me." And suddenly, I realised, what about all the things that I've done to people? And it's exactly what was just said, exactly. And I'm sitting here listening, wow, you're telling my life story. You're telling my life story. It was amazing, it was just... So I got to meet Desmond Tutu, yeah, who's a very learned man in this restorative forgiveness world, and we had some real long conversations about forgiveness and how it can heal you. Because I was walking about with this pain, with this, it's like having a knot inside you, and all I was doing was walking about with this anger. And you know, when you're angry, you got clenched fists, and you can never receive. When you've got a clenched fist, never ever received a gift. So I opened my hands and I received this gift, and first of all, I forgive myself. That was the first thing I've done. I forgive myself for all the people. Someone talks about self-forgiveness, this guy here, and that opened my mind to not here. That opened my mind to forgiving others. And yeah, it's just something I needed to talk about because I'm sitting here listening. I was sitting here listening, and I just needed to talk about it. So, prison. In prison, I do workshops in prison, and these workshops are on restorative justice. We try to get prisons working restoratively. First of all, we went into 2 prisons, Featherstone and Buckley Hall, and we trained staff and residents, inmates, in the restorative process. So each and every one we trained as facilitators. For this to work, you have to have buy-in. You've got to have the buy-in from all levels, not only from staff, from management, from residents. And if there's one set who's not buying in, it's not going to work. We've moved to Peterborough prison, and recently this prison has just been given a distinguished award for the way they're running their prisons. It's reduced fact, it's reduced adjudications, offences within the prison, it's reduced violence, staff on inmates on staff, inmates on inmates, even better working conditions for staff. They're using it for in-house disputes. If 2 staff have got a little bit of grief, they're using restorative justice. The whole thing is being run restoratively. Can you pass me my drink, please? I think restorative justice is, or a restorative approach is something that doesn't require forgiveness. There's nothing. The person who I went through the restorative process with, we was doing a radio interview some 6 years after the restorative justice conference meeting, and the radio presenter asked, "What was it like when Peter said sorry?" And Will, the guy who I'd offended against, who I'd harmed greatly, said, "Peter's never said sorry." And I was gobsmacked, because I really, in my head, was deeply, and he said he didn't have to say sorry, because I could see he was sorry. I could see he was sorry. And that gave me a greater understanding. That moment gave me a greater understanding, again, of forgiveness. And we spoke about it, Will Riley and I, and he said to me, "I forgive you as a human being, but I don't forgive what you done. What you done wasn't very nice. It wasn't very nice at all. You know, and we're talking about I burgled someone's house, hit them on the head, put them in hospital, etc., etc., etc." So that got me thinking to another form of forgiveness, and I took that back into the prisons again, and we looked at, again, it's all about self-forgiveness. Everything for me is about self-forgiveness, fear and pride, because as you said, in prisons you can't show this weakness, you can't show that you've got this you can't tell people that you was raped as a child. You can't tell people that, you know, for a man to tell this sort of thing, you can't say, "Listen, I'm really in pain because as a child I was gang raped on a regular basis." You can't tell these sort of things, you know, to other guys in prison, or even to therapists, because you don't know how it's gonna. So I went for therapy, and for the first time in my life, I told how I felt, how things were for me, and they explained to me these things probably determine how you behaved, how you acted towards other people. So self-forgiveness has played a big part in my long-term rehabilitation. I would like to, you know, it's like that song, I'd like to teach the world to sing sort of thing. I'd like for us to all start embracing this restorative approach. I'd like for us to all start embracing this forgiving approach. I really believe that, and I've witnessed it in prisons, you know, guys who were in separate gangs who walked along the concourses attacking each other after attending our workshops and practicing this forgiving, restorative ethos, suddenly walk along as friends and walk along trying to improve other people's lives. So if guys and women can do it in this contained environment, surely it's got to be. Is it easier or is it harder? I don't know. It's a question for you to think about. Is it easier, or can the world make it easier, or is it harder in? I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. I'm just a lay person who's had experiences, and I try to share my experiences for the better. A lot of what I've learned, and a lot of what I hear, comes from. It seems to. Modern day stuff seems to come from a 12-step program that was Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. Their program seems to be where restorative justice definitely came from. You know, you've got this guy Bar-Ilan who saw that in the 12-step program there was a reparation to be made, and so he started looking. You're going to hear more about Bar-Ilan later on, but he started looking at the importance of reparation, and so there was the birthplace of restorative justice, I think, personally. Yeah.
May I ask you a question?
You can ask, anyone can ask me a question.
You said something that I'm still stuck with, out of curiosity. You say a restorative prison, and I wanted to know what it is.
A restorative prison. We're in prison. Here we are, in prison. And you break the rules. And instead of going down, I'm an officer, you call me, whatever you call me, a bad name. And instead of getting punished, which is the usual thing, you go to the adjudication, you get the officer and the person involved to sit down and talk about it restoratively. This is how I felt when you said this to me. You know, this is what happened, and this is what's been going on in my. So people can start understanding each other more. There's in prison, you know, most people ain't never going to go to prison, but in prison there's an awful thing that goes on that other guys or other women say bad things about your family. That's the way to get at you, yeah. And they don't know what's going on for you, so. Circles are a good thing in prisons. There's a lot of circle work going on, restorative circle, where people can start talking about their feelings in a safe environment. But if you do it on a one-to-one level, it's easier for the person to understand. If you say to me, your mother's, or whatever, yeah? And my mother's dead. So that's going to hurt me tenfold, but this person doesn't know that. So if we can sit down and talk about that, they get a better understanding, and hopefully they don't use that sort of language, that sort of behaviour again. And this is how 2 or 3 prisons at the moment are being run in England.
So it becomes a principle of how to operate the prison by restorative principles?
Yeah, the whole prison is run on a restorative principle.
So I would ask, how do you get the authorities of the prison to accept it?
It's, first of all, you've got to have management.
Is it top down or bottom up?
It has to be both ways. It has to be every way, really. If management have to buy into it, the officers, the middle management have to. Everyone has to buy into it. If there's one, this is what I said right at the beginning. If one set of people involved don't buy in, it can't work. And it's exactly the same as a restorative conference. If the victim and offender, if the offender says no, it can't happen, or if the victim says no, it can't happen. So everyone has to buy into this, and it's proved time and time again. We done an experiment. Unfortunately, it didn't get researched in Highdown Prison, where Peter Dawson was the governor there, and he was amazed what we done with the Forgiveness Project. He was amazed at how the whole prison changed. How 1 minute everyone was hating each other, and suddenly everyone was not loving each other but respecting each other.
Okay. So I don't want to take your time, but it raises more questions.
Good.
No, we leave it for private discussion.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Maybe someone else has some more questions about it.
Forgiveness for you is after a long process. The end point is forgive, or forgiveness is the process that you still need to work on it, or I don't know. For you,
Forgiveness, for me, I had to, again, I had to start with, before I could forgive anyone or even allow people to forgive me, I had to look at me, and I had to come to an understanding of my behaviours and my attitudes. And until I could forgive myself, I think I was quite closed. Yeah, I think I was, because I didn't understand myself. And so I went through this process. You know, people seem to have this thing about, the restorative process opened everything. That's not the case. The restorative process opened the door for me, and I took the courage and I walked through that door. And suddenly people from the Forgiveness Project, from Cambridge University, from people started shouting, no, but you know, this is serious, because you know, I went through a process and didn't even realise that I was suffering from post-traumatic stress. So I had to look at myself and learn about myself and learn how to forgive myself before I could even embrace forgiveness.
And why it was so important for you to do this process?
Why was it so important that I needed to go through a forgiveness process?
Yeah.
Because of the way I felt about myself. I felt for a long time, you know, I was brought up in a world where to be bad was good, yeah? And so I've done a lot of bad things to people. And once you start understanding the difference between right and wrong, or, yeah, understanding it, suddenly you've got this pressure on you. You've got to make it right. You've just got to make it right somehow. And I explored, like I said, I was a drug addict, so I went into a 12-step program, and I looked at all the people I'd harmed and became willing to make amends to people, etc., etc. But they never really talked to me about forgiveness, and forgiveness was the key for me. I had to forgive myself because I didn't like myself. I became a different person. I stopped committing crimes. I stopped taking drugs. I stopped drinking alcohol. I'd done everything I could. I educated myself. Done everything I could to do the right thing, but I couldn't take away that feeling, and that was that knot within me. So I had to look for how to get rid of it. And once I explored and accepted and embraced forgiveness, that started to gradually, it didn't just vanish. We're not talking about a bolt of lightning out of the sky. This is a process. So that's why, for me.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you. It's a very important lecture for me. Is it easier today for you to forgive? After processing so many things through your life.
Is it easier for me to forgive?
Easier through the years?
But life's easier for me over the years, but you know, I'm a human being. Listen, I'm just a human being. I'm not this, you know, forgiveness person or anything. And sometimes things come up when I think, oh man, I don't like that. But today, I don't react. Yeah, there's a I believe that you need to respond. Yeah, react. You do it. Yeah. And you can't take it back usually, yeah? But if you respond, it's usually a well thought out thing. You know, how to respond. How should I reply? How should I think? Just you've got to just take that. So yeah, I find it easier. Yeah. Yes.
Can you also relate the process to an age that a person is? The older the person becomes, the more can that person look inside and realize the processes, the older the person becomes? Question number one. Because you know the English say that wisdom comes with the age.
Can I answer that first then? My ex-wife and I got called to the school. I'm going to give you a story to answer it. Got called to the school, and our son Jacob was a little bit naughty at times, and anyway, he got a branch from a tree and put it in the head of a bottle, a glass bottle, and flicked it, and it went out of the school ground and into a garden and smashed. So we get called to the school, and I say, well, can we deal with this restoratively? Ooh, they go, you know, because I don't want to get involved. I go round to we go round, Louise and I go round to this lady. She's a very elderly lady, and I explain what we're going to do. And she said, oh, it's all right, it's, you know, typical, it's all right, he didn't mean any harm, but he needs to understand. He needs to understand. So I said to him, how did you feel at the time? It was fun. How do you feel now? I feel scared. What can we do to make it right? Oh, I don't know. And we go through the process with a woman. And the woman tells us what the biggest deal was. The biggest deal was she was 80 years of age. She had a little dog, and this bottle came over and smashed. And she couldn't get down to clear the glass up, yeah? And she couldn't afford vet's bills because she was an old lady. And all she's got in her life was this little dog. And as she's telling us this, I got tears. And I look at Jacob and I say, how do you feel now? He said, awful. I never meant for this to happen. So how can we make it right? He said, I'll clear it up. And she said, no, it's all right. He said, no, I want to clear this glass up. And for the rest of that woman's life, Jacob went and cleared her garden every Saturday. That's the power of restorative justice. She forgave him. She didn't forgive the bottle, she forgave him because he was a kid. So, no, I think it's about emotional intelligence, really, is the answer.
And does intelligence grow over years?
No. No, personally, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe, does intelligence grow over the years? I think you could become a tad wiser. I think you become a tad more knowledgeable, but that doesn't mean that you're more intelligent. You know, I know some academics, I know some top academics, and I don't consider them intelligent. I find they're quite clever around what they do, but I don't find them, you know, switched on people.
So here comes my second question.
Right.
Not about academics, but about the church. Does the church play any role in the process? Religion, forgiveness, because it's basically Christianity.
I think does the church play any part in forgiveness as is basic Christianity? Unfortunately, you're asking the wrong person this, I think, because I'm not a churchly, godly person. I don't think that I have my own beliefs about what's going on, but I don't think the church as such has any role to play in it.
פתוח לעוד שאלות בבקשה, אם אתם רוצים.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I have a question, but I'm just wondering. So I hear you and I heard Robert. And you're talking about forgiveness and the benefits of forgiveness, etc. But then I thought to myself that it's a bit too late because it happens only after you commit the crimes or after you sit in prison. So then I thought to myself, how can someone forgive others or forgive himself before performing all these crimes and getting into this criminal behavior. Because once you're already in prison, you hurt so many people that it's a bit too late.
Okay, but we're not talking... forgiveness of a crime, for instance. If someone commits a crime, if I commit a crime against you, it's you who's going to forgive me. I'm in prison no matter what. You have got nothing to forgive me for if I don't commit that crime. It's that simple, that's that simple.
No, but you were talking about forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
After committing crime, right?
Yeah. Well, not just crime. About our, today, if I think badly, if I think not very nice thoughts about you, I've got to think, hang on a minute, that's not good. That's not good. And I have to go through a process. Because otherwise resentment can get me and resentment can fester. And then I don't really care about you then. I don't care, because who are you? I resent you because you've suddenly ignited these feelings. So you can't start forgiving anything if there's nothing to forgive. I can't.
But so obviously I'm not criticizing.
No.
But it leads me to the other question, like Uli. I heard what you said about yourself, the process that you went through, and I heard what Robert said. And I thought, I don't know, I'm not criticizing, but it's a bit unhuman. I mean, how can you expect human beings to behave this way? We do resent, we are angry, we want revenge. And I hear about this beautiful, peaceful world where everybody's, we forgive each other.
No, but it's not a beautiful, peaceful world. This is still the world. We're still living in the world. I'll give you an example. Look, Mary, I just call him, I won't go. Mary, her 15-year-old daughter was murdered, yeah? Stabbed to death at a party. And it was the very first party that this 15-year-old girl had been allowed to go to. So she's sad, she's everything, all these, yeah? And what happened at the party was, this girl had brought a knife and she was looking for another girl. Some words were said, yeah? And whatever was said resulted in her death. Now Mary, all she wants is to know what her daughter's last words were. That's all she wants, yeah? She accepts that she's dead, and she accepts that nothing's going to change. Nothing can bring her daughter back. She forgives the girl who done it. She forgives the girl. And the reason she forgives the girl, she knows that her daughter wouldn't want to have seen her in so much pain for the rest of her life. And the only way she could move on was to forgive. So she had to find forgiveness. She wrote to and the prison authorities refused to give her the letter, yeah? So at the moment we're trying to set up a restorative meeting so that they can sit down. Because there's questions. I'm involved in a charity called Why Me. Most victims want to know why me. They want to know why. They want to know. Being a victim of a crime is very much like going through the grief process. Yeah? When someone dies, first thing you think is, wow, what's happened here? Why has it happened to us? Why? Yeah, why? And when you walk home and your house has been broken into, first thing you think is, why me? Why has this happened to me? You want answers. And sometimes you've got to, for me, for instance, I had to go through a process to get really honest, to forgive myself so I could give them answers. But for something has to happen before you can do any forgiving, surely. I don't understand. If you're saying, why can't we do this process before anything happens? What's there to forgive?
It's like prevention.
Yeah, but
before the person
I understand that.
so raged.
No, but there's got to be something. There has to be something.
Is there somehow that we could prevent this process?
Of course, it's simple. This is all simple stuff. It's education. We bring forgiveness into every school. We bring restorative approaches into every school. For the older generation, we start doing parenting with forgiveness. We start doing parenting with restorative approaches, and it just goes on and on and on. It's just, that's the preventative way. Education. Education is the most powerful tool I've ever come across.
There's agreement here. Absolutely, yeah.
Is it? Done? One more.
Were there also restorative conferencing among prisoners
Oh, yeah.
themselves?
Yeah.
And did they agree to talk to each other?
Absolutely. There were wing representatives, coordinators, inmates, and if anyone wanted a challenge, for want of a better word, or wanted to sit down with another inmate, they went to the wing representative and they arranged it. And they sat down.
But there must have been an agreement.
Yeah, there's all.
the two.
Yeah. If one says no, it don't happen.
Peter, the restorative process between prisoners and their victims, does it take place in prison itself?
It can take place anywhere.
So sometimes they take the prisoners out to the community.
No. If the prisoner, hang on. if the prisoner is a serving prisoner, it's easier, more logistically.
So the victims comes in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter, could you please relate to the issue of re-entry, forgiveness, or self-forgiveness, or forgiveness to the other is a part of the re-entry process? Can you repeat the question?
Can I just think about the question first? Can I relate to forgiveness as part of a re-entry process? I think really and truly, by the time people are being reintegrated into society from prisons, we should be, look, in the UK, I'll answer it this way. In the UK, there's 84,000 people in prison, yeah? And out of that 84,000 people, there's not a lot of people who are very bad. There's a lot of people who make bad choices, yeah? So if we can educate the people in prison, because just because I talk about the UK, I know the numbers. But here, in Israel, there's people in prison, all they're in here for is making bad choices. This is all about bad choices, most things. So if we can educate about bad choices, yeah, and look at the word of forgiveness and start looking at, taking away the shame, because a lot of it is shame, a lot of it is shame. If we can take away that shame by the forgiveness process or by a restorative process, the reintegration into society must come easier. Must be easier. So yeah, I think it's an important thing in reintegration.
But also the family should go through some sort of...
Families should go through some program, but there's some families, if you engaged with them, if I'd engaged my family with the process I went through, the restorative process, if they'd have been there, the whole thing would have been so different. Depends on the family. Yeah.
They're on time, yes.
Thank you.